Hey, Parker.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to FanRank. I am Mackenzie, and I am joined by my esteemed co-hosts Andrew and Tim. You guys would like to say hello?
Hello, I'm Andrew, writer, voiceover guy, Spider-Man fan. Very excited about this rank.
I'm Tim, I'm a content editor at WatchMojo, and I'm something of a supervillain myself.
Aha!
You know, I'm something of a scientist myself.
Today we are going to be ranking the top 10 Spider-Man movie villains of all time. And it's important to remember that while this show is hosted by us, ultimately it is created by our fans. All week we have been taking polls, we've been doing surveys, we've been posting all over social media and have gotten a fantastic response. So at the end of the show, we are going to reveal the top 10 rank that our fans have chosen. Very exciting stuff. In the meantime, I will just give us a quick rundown of what we have in front of us. Of course, we have our list of villains. We have our list of movies, years. This is the original rank that WatchMojo published in 2021. And then we have, of course, our fan ranks, because although we reached out to our massive fans, our collective of fans, our community, we ourselves are fans also. So that's what we're here to discuss. And let's get into it. What do you guys think makes a great villain? I'm going to start with a big question because I think that's important to narrow down before we get into Spidey.
I think the great villain has to have some quotes, just some things that you repeat over and over again, just something iconic phrase to tie it into it. I think that really goes a long way to a great villain in this franchise.
Andrew, do you have a favorite villain quote off the top of your head?
Man, I'm cycling through a lot, but I think it's got to be Green Goblin breaks into Aunt May's bedroom and she's praying and she's saying, "Deliver us!" And he just goes, "Finish it! Finish it! Deliver us! Finish it! Finish it! Evil!"
Evil!
Evil!
It's fantastic.
Iconic. Tim, what do you think makes a great Spidey villain?
These are some of the best villain characters in comics and in film, and I think a lot of the reason for that, for the latter, is just a really great performance. You have really powerhouse actors playing a lot of these roles, and a lot of them just eat it up, as indicated by that last quote. I mean, they go hard, and obviously it's hard to match Willem Dafoe, but I mean, they're all pretty up there too. They're giving him a run for his money in terms of theatricality.
Definitely. I think for me, what makes an interesting villain for Spider-Man in the Spider-Man universe, not just the Spider-Verse, is like the relationship between him and Peter Parker, and how much that's able to like play out. Because I feel like Spider-Man is full of like parallels and choices and like forks in the road, choosing between good and evil, and what the villains represent and that tension between themselves. I think that's what makes like a really, really interesting Spider-Man villain. But there's also the component of just who simply looks the sickest. And it's hard to beat someone who has 8 mechanical arms that are both puppet and CGI.
For a second, I thought you meant like physically ill. Like who looks the most physically ill?
Who does look the most physically ill?
That would be Paul Giamatti's the Rhino.
Yeah. He's having a rough go.
Yeah.
I don't know. Dane DeHaan's Green Goblin looks pretty on his deathbed.
He's literally sick. He is literally dying.
Look at me!
Right on. So let's take a look at our previous criteria. What were we looking at in 2021? And I believe we dropped this right before No Way Home came out because everybody was freaking out about this movie. This was the ultimate like villain comeback showdown. So I want to talk a little bit about the rank, but what we were looking at when we ranked this previously was most threatening, sympathetic, and intimidating antagonists in the live action and animated webhead films. I think that stands. I think we can use that criteria again. We can look at this again. But I think it's important to ask, who are we including and what are we not including? So what doesn't get included here?
Japanese Spider-Man?
What?
Japanese Spider-Man?
Japanese Spider-Man? Okay, yeah, so we're looking at English language recent movies, full-length movies. We are including animated as well as live action because we're all very excited for Across the Spider-Verse that's coming up this weekend.
Yes, and to not spoil it for any of you, we'll keep away from Across the Spider-Verse villains for now. We'll revisit later, but just no spoilers for this for anyone who goes to see it this weekend.
Yeah. Enjoy this video fully, knowing that you are safe from spoilers of what you will be seeing after this video. Cool. So I actually wanted to pull up a quote that somebody posted on YouTube, Aspire to Inspire, made an interesting point. I'm going to read it here. Spider-Man is nothing without his villains. In the last 20 years, we've gotten 3 different live-action versions of Spider-Man who have all been varying levels of excellent and an animated assortment of Spider-Men. That was just as good, if not somehow better. If Spider-Man was truly nothing without his villains, all 10 of those Spider-Man films would be, well, excellent. And while most of them are entertaining, not all of them are excellent. And part of that is because villains are just so important to the very fabric of what makes a Spider-Man movie great. I think that is a really interesting point because, like I said, I think superhero films in general are all about this tension between good and evil. Do you guys agree? Is a superhero movie only as good as its villains?
First of all, I want to read that commenter's full essay, so please finish your thoughts.
Yeah, go on.
But I 100% agree. I think, people remember The Dark Knight because of Heath Ledger's Joker. People remember Watchmen because of Adrian Veidt. So I think the villain and their relation to the hero and how they push the hero in different directions is always so important to these films.
Yeah, Tim, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, I think the hero Spider-Man is, he's the one we're rooting for. He's the one we empathize with. But going into a new Spider-Man movie, we know there's going to be Spider-Man in it. That's the constant. The fun part of going into a new movie is seeing what villain they're going to, put to screen. That's what I've always looked forward to since I was a kid. It's like, oh, they're going to do the Sandman. Oh, how's that going to go? And obviously sometimes it's been better than not. But I think that the villain is obviously the meteor role, and I love seeing how they're portrayed in live action or animated.
Yeah. So then across the board, I do kind of want to talk like franchises also. Across the board, do you guys have a favorite between the 3, 4, if we're including Spider-Verse?
Oh, that's hard. Man, I love Spider-Man 2, personally. I think as a movie, it's probably like the best fully formed Spider-Man movie, and just it hit a peak of just Peter Parker Spider-Man. I think that has everyone's come close, but Spider-Man 2, it's just so complete.
Yeah, that's mine too. So not to echo Andrew.
Same.
This is why I got into superheroes in the first place. Is this movie? So I mean, it's not the most Spider-Man movie. Obviously, that's coming out today, but it is always going to be, in my heart, the best one. They're my favorite.
Yeah, because I think what they were able to do with Spider-Man 2 is it's like the CGI had advanced so much by that point that actually they were able to lean in so much more to what made the first film so spectacular. And all of those graphics, like all of that CGI really holds up. Like even the first one, like that was 21 years ago. It still looks fantastic. But I think because like the second movie, just like, I mean, I think both movies, but especially in the second one, it doesn't rely on action to just be like filler. It actually is building a lot of story, and it's just visually so spectacular. So I think, yeah, like while the first one, like a Green Goblin too, like does lean into a lot of camp, the gravitas of Doc Ock, I think, weighs this movie down, and it gives it a kind of seriousness with the spectacular visuals.
You have a train to catch.
Yeah, I'm very attached. I was going to say the Tobys are by far my favorite.
Yeah. I love that it spotlighted New York City's above ground Manhattan train that cuts through the entire city. That totally exists.
Doesn't look anything like Chicago at all.
No, yeah. Not at all.
They mastered very well. So then, yeah, those are, yeah. So I'm attached to those ones. Those were kind of also like the first kind of more grown up movies that I saw. I think like around 2002, 2004, like, so it has a very special place in my heart. There's some awesome, like, kind of violence. I think Aunt May says, like, don't fall on your ass in the first movie. So it's like, I think this movie is very tied to a lot of people's, our age, like their childhood and stuff too. But I wonder if next gen will look at the Tom Hollands that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because it's so tied into everything else. Like you can watch the Tobys knowing nothing about superhero movies,
yeah.
But the Hollands, like you need a little bit of knowledge to get into those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some lore there. Do you guys prefer, like, because what I like about the original, the Tobys, I'll call them for simplicity's sake, is that it's kind of gritty, and it's kind of like it's all about like these characters kind of and their dreams for themselves and what they could be. So then, you know, what do you think? What are the other series about in that way?
Amazing Spider-Man about Philip Phillips and his home song.
And I will do it for you.
And how his arc across the year. Yeah. I think the Amazing Spider-Man films aimed to, really lean about like responsibility and what really is your responsibility as opposed to what is kind of just circumstance you're in. Mm-hmm. And they were getting there. Not quite, but they almost got there. But yeah, mainly the home thing is what Amazing Spider-Man was about.
According to the teacher at the end of the movie, there's actually only one story in all of fiction. It's Who Am I? So that's my answer.
Who am I?
Good. Yeah, good answer. That's an easy answer. The answer to everything. So then what do you make of the MCU tie-ins? Where do you think, like, where does it go from there with the Holland series now?
MCU is very much about growing up. They really made that choice to put him firmly in high school, more high school than we've ever gotten, even in Tobyverse, where all the high schoolers were clearly 25. We got more high school than ever, and we saw him grow up to the point where Holland ends where a lot of, at least the trilogy ends, where a lot of Spider-Men start, like at the cusp of adulthood. So we've now seen him grow up, and now we're ready to see him in spandex, fighting across the city, poor, living in a bad New York City bedroom. It's great, which is pretty good now in this current market. So
it's a steal.
Yeah, he's paying $3,000 a month for that thing.
Okay, so I'd like to get into talking about our ranks, but before we get into the ranks, I do want to talk about which Spidey villains are the worst. So we did a poll. We did a poll of our beloved fans. Which Spidey villain is the absolute worst? We had 47,000 votes, which is fantastic. So we have some real data here. We have some real takes. This isn't, it's not just us. 41% that said that New Goblin was the worst.
Oh, wow.
Strawberries.
Which surprised me, and Rhino came in second at 24%.
I told you I would be back.
Well, Rhino always comes in second. Doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
You can't win.
He had like 6 minutes of screen time, so that's pretty impressive.
He really made an impression in the worst way. He made the most, in a way, of what little screen time he had. But now there was a lot of support in the comments for New Goblin. I included him in my rank. You guys did not. Thoughts?
Oh, okay. New Goblin as opposed to Harry Goblin.
As opposed to new Goblin.
Yeah, no, the old New Goblin.
The old
new old Goblin. From Spider-Man 3, Harry Osborn.
I love Harry Osborn for most of that franchise, and his quotes of like love him in Spider-Man 2 where he goes up to Peter's like, oh, we're talking about Spider-Man tonight. Goes every night until it's done. And his trajectory was so interesting, but because they had to shove so much into that last movie, it gets hamstrung by there's an amnesia plot.
I know.
He's eating pie in a restaurant.
It's so good.
So good. So good.
How's the pie?
So good.
And then he vanishes behind a bus for no reason.
Yeah, crawling under a table. So I think they kind of reset his journey weirdly 10 minutes into the film, and then he has to build back up to it, and then all he does is ruin one relationship, and that's it. That's the extent of evil. He was more evil in 2. So yeah, I think there was so much potential, and I think they squandered it so much in that third movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think this movie is super crowded and has about 40 minutes too much of eating, cooking, and dancing, which with a movie with 3 big villains really doesn't need to have any of those things. But yeah, what I like about him is that it kind of like there's so much backstory from the previous 2 movies building up to this kind of like end of his arc, and the parallels between him and Peter growing up, they're always kind of in competition with each other, even though they're really close. So I felt like even though, yeah, the amnesia plot is dumb, and honestly, the New Goblin name also is dumb, in my opinion. But I do feel like that was a positive way to like end his arc and give us like some closure with that character. So that's why I put him in my rank. But Tim, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, poor frames, Janko. I have to agree with Andrew for the most part. I think that I don't hate that movie. I convinced myself when I first saw it that it wasn't that bad. And I'm slowly starting to roll back on that. But I think the worst parts of that movie are the Harry stuff. It's just, it feels tonally out of place.
Yeah.
I think, and I agree, yes, the movie is too crowded. They should have just made that whole movie the Harry movie, and then maybe save the other 2 villains for later. And I just, yeah, it feels weird, the whole, like, I'm going to break up your relationship. Like, it's just, okay.
Hard. Yeah.
That was out there, you know, doing some real acts of terror, but sure. You know. Breaking hearts, Harry.
Breaking hearts. So the one that, yeah, you guys both included Curtis Connors in the rank. I did not. What do you guys like about the Lizard? I framed that question in a really accusatory way. I might be wrong, but I'm just interested to hear what's up with you guys.
I like the way he slays his peas throughout the whole movie. You won't get me, puny Peter Parker.
Poor Peter Parker.
He slays his peas.
He does. Every time I watch that movie, I take a drink every time he does a pee sound. That sounds weird. I like this. I like this character. As you know, Spider-Man villains are great when they're these kind of. They're always like, nice people for the most part, or not terrible people, and then they end up like, oh no, I'm a villain. Like they end up injecting themselves with some kind of serum, and it makes them crazy. I think that's where you get into some really good storytelling, where you have these kind of Jekyll and Hyde characters.
Yep.
And no one is more Jekyll and Hyde. Well, maybe the Goblin, but the Lizard is also very of two minds. So I like that dynamic.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that the idea of his story is so it's so tragic. He's just trying to fix one thing about himself that he wants to regain back, that he feels he's lost, and that journey to do that ends up in two things: mutant rats that eat other animals, and him turning into a giant lizard. I think when it gets down to the stuff where he's just the sight of him, the first scene where he just unfurls his arm and he looks at it and he's in awe, is honestly just very moving.
Yeah, that's cool.
I do think, yes, at the end he kind of spirals when he wants to turn everybody into lizards.
You lost it somewhere.
Something in that doesn't make sense.
It's like, I was with you to it, now I'm like not sure.
Yeah. But I do think the actor who plays him, Rhys Ifan, I'm sorry if I'm butchering his name, but he gives such a great performance. And yeah, I think right until we get to the lizard people, we're really good here.
Yeah.
So I think it just doesn't stick the landing, but 75% of his character is pretty good for me.
Yeah, that's a super fair point, because I was going to say the reason that I left him off was because ultimately I think like I'm not following the mission. like wait, why do we need to all be lizards? Or like, okay, like I get it, but like ultimately I don't really care. And I find that like the CGI and the character design is kind of lame.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
It gets even worse in the new one. I didn't like the weird face in the new movie. Actually, the weird face in both are not good. It's a weird choice they made with the Goomba head from like the Mario Brothers movie, but green. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, he was an afterthought in that movie.
yeah, because I thought the buildup was so good. Like you were saying, Andrew, like the story is so interesting. You're really kind of with him, and then it's like, wait, like what are we doing now? No, okay, no, I'm not on board. But yeah, but there was a lot of like love for him I was seeing in the comments and in the polls. So I might be an outlier here. That's fine. But I kind of just wanted to like chat about it and see you guys where your heads were at, where your minds were at.
That's cold-blooded, Mackenzie.
Cold-blooded.
Like a lizard.
Get it? Proud of you. That was good.
Thank you.
Too many animal puns we can make on the show.
So another thing I wanted to talk about that in a morbid way kind of made me laugh, to be honest, that we included the mugger who ends Uncle Ben. Various years NA.
The original Spider-Man villain.
The original
sin.
So I included him in my rank because that is what kind of like really starts putting things in motion for him, and things start clicking into place. That's what kind of it's like the catalyst for kind of how he crafts his identity as Spider-Man. But how does like the mugger compare to these other villains? Because that seems like an outlier to me.
Well, his highlights, first of all, let's talk about those. Those are supernatural. But I do think he kind of gets overlooked in the first two trilogies, and he's not even really mentioned in the Holland movies.
Yeah.
But without him, literally, Spider-Man doesn't exist. He is the villain that kicks off Spider-Man's transition from a wrestling career or just in Andrew Garfield's case, to just being a guy to being Spider-Man. So it teaches Spider-Man like, hey, if I don't step in to do something, then much worse things can happen. So I think he teaches Peter a very morbid and valuable lesson that informs the rest of his career, even though he can't physically match up to Spider-Man. Neither could Eddie Brock. So,
Yeah.
I don't think that's a qualifier of like, you got to go hand to hand with him.
Right. It's not so much who would win in a fight as like who is the real antagonist in Spider-Man's story.
Yes.
Yeah, I follow. Tim, what do you think?
Yeah, we've gotten this character twice in different scenarios. The only thing that kind of bumps me down a little bit for me is in the second one with the Garfield, they completely dropped that narrative thread. He's out there hunting for him. He's like, I'm gonna get the guy with the star in his hand tattoo. Only he has that tattoo. I'm gonna get him. And then they don't go back to that ever again after all the Blizzard stuff.
He got covered up.
Yeah, he worked.
Got laser. Yeah.
But I love the portrayal in the first movie.
Yeah. Agreed. So speaking of Andrew, you mentioned his highlights. It made me laugh because there was a lot of like comments from the fans about sarcastic answers of like who's the biggest like Spider-Man villain, and people were saying like Bonesaw, of course, is a classic. It's like the real like villain in the story. Are there other like jokey, low-key villains who can make an argument for being on this list? Who are the underrated villains of the Spider-Man franchise?
Mr. Dickovich, the landlord, is one of the most underrated Spider-Man villains, coming coldly for Peter for that rent.
Yeah.
Where's my money?
He's got one thing on his mind.
Hey, I have for years been quoting him. Whenever my friend has a problem, in dating, I say, hey, you go up to her and you say, I am a good man. You're a good woman.
If it's a woman you're calling, then you say, you're a good woman, I'm a good man.
And then the deafening silence.
That's it, yeah.
Works every time.
Because I was going to say whoever gave the mugger those highlights, but...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Send him down a path of evil.
Yeah. And that was the catalyst in his story for why he turned out to be a bad dude. Okay, so I think it's time to reveal the rank of the fans. I want to know what the consensus is, what they thought, versus what we thought, us as three fans ourselves and as WatchMojo, as we said in 2021. So let's load up our fan rank.
It's my birthday. Now it's time for me to light my candles.
Okay, so here's our fan rank. After the polls, the surveys, all of this amazing engagement, this is the rank that our fans have chose. It is actually quite different from what we published in 2021. What are your initial impressions?
Electro?
I
know. That's the biggest, pun intended, shocker for me. I think I think Electro, I definitely agree that in No Way Home he was so fun because it leaned into Jamie Foxx's comedic sensibilities a lot more and let him kind of just steal some scenes quietly. But Amazing Spider-Man 2, Electro is kind of not as developed, or he's not developed at all. So no. It's fun to see that he resonates with so many people despite not really giving as much as these other guys.
Cut to Electro going like, "It's my birthday," messing with his like comb over.
That's why you're here. You remember my birthday?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's odd in that movie for me because there's like a kind of a juncture between like there's a tonal dissonance between him that's kind of like not played for laughs, but he's kind of like quirky and cliche. He has these little lines, you know, he has this kind of physicality to him. But then in the other parts of the movie, they're kind of trying to like build a romance, like there's a big death. He feels odd to me in this movie. I'm surprised that he's on this list. Tim, do you have thoughts?
I mean,
feelings?
they definitely just kind of dropped the Max Dillon and just made him Jamie Foxx in the new one.
Yeah.
So that definitely helped that he didn't have to play this kind of like how do I even describe
Bootleg Dr. Manhattan, literally, because he lives in the same city.
Right, yeah.
He's in residency.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that here? I'm not super surprised by this, to be honest. To me, the big question was always, is it going to be Green Goblin or Doc Ock at number one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think Norman Osborn he pulls together the Sinister Six. I do count six because Tom Hardy was drinking Mai Tais on the beach in that movie. He's the sixth villain. He just gave such a tremendous performance and you feel sympathy for him. He's just this lost character. He doesn't know where his son is. He doesn't know where he is. All he wants to do is kind of just get back home, essentially. But his own Green Goblin side of him just doesn't let that happen. He's just holding him back and drives him to do darker things than he even has ever done before. So I think, and Willem Dafoe is just untouchable in that movie.
Norman's on sabbatical, honey.
And going back to the original, so many quotes that we love to hear. So yeah, I definitely see why he rose up in the ranks.
Yeah, to me, I put him at my number one because I think there's such an interesting dynamic between him and Norman Osborn, Peter Parker, and Green Goblin and Spider-Man, in the sense that Norman Osborn and the Goblin give him like kind of many opportunities to choose the kind of a shortcut of like, oh, it's easier to like, you know, use his connections, like accept his help, accept his money, like join forces for evil. And then I think it always ends up with Peter choosing the more difficult path, which is ultimately what is right. And Norman Osborn, who gets so consumed by maybe greed is too harsh, but ambition beyond reason, that he loses sight of what is right and what is morally correct. And I think as father figures too, like Norman Osborn versus Uncle Ben is super interesting. Like I think, and that makes their penultimate scene so impactful, is that there's so much story between them, both like as supers and as people, that it makes it so dynamic.
I've been like a father to you. Be a son to me now.
But our fans were like quite like divided. Like I saw super strong arguments for both Otto and Norman. A lot of gifs, which made my day. I was like,
He's right. Listen. Listen to me now.
I was like, I love a work day. We're like looking down through like gifs of like Alfred Molina like chatting and playing with the puppets. Like it's so good. But Tim, why did you put Dr. Octopus as your number one? Because I think that's equally valid.
Yeah, I think he's just he's more at the center of the heart of that movie. He's actually a really tragic character.
Yeah.
In that, you know, he his own ambition, but not just his own ambition, but his own oversights leads to not only the death of his wife, but his own madness sets in. You know, when the claws, tentacles take hold of him, and so there's a real pathos to his journey his very flawed journey once he is resigned to continue his greatest error, his greatest failure. I love the arc of him as well. I think he's got the best villain arc in all these movies.
Yeah. And he plays it straight. Like, I mean, like, we get a powerful performance from Willem Dafoe, but there's a lot of camp to the Green Goblin. The suit is a little campy. It looks good, but it's a little, campy. There's extreme highs, there's extreme lows, but I feel like Alfred Molina brings such a weight to this role that makes that whole arc, as you said, Tim, like very impactful and very dynamic. Plus, that movie has the train scene. Which I think is at least I think that's the best scene out of all of these movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wonder that no one put the train as a villain, not as even like a joke.
Hey, no, don't blame that train. That train was set up to fail.
That train was doing its best, all right?
Victim of circumstance.
Yeah. Another really interesting point that was brought up in the comments from our fans was that when we think of iconic superhero villains or the best superhero villain, we tend to think Joker. Right? We tend to think Ledger's Joker as the kind of perfect performance for the perfect role in the perfect movie. But that maybe like some of these villains and some of these films could occupy that space somewhat equally. Do you think that, Defoe's Goblin, Molina's Doc Ock, are they on that tier?
I think so. I think, of course, Green Goblin is a more Joker parallel. But yeah, I think Doc Ock, you just get so invested in that story about, he wakes up, he realizes his wife is dead, the arms come out of his back. It's kind of like, I'll get hate for this. It's kind of like the end of the Star Wars prequel trilogy done right when he comes out of the surgery.
No!
It's the same scene. Oh, a year early. So I think you just come on this journey with him so that it is rewarding when you see him in No Way Home get that resolution and avoid his tragic ending. And yeah, I think he definitely carries. And I think Mysterio too. A lot of people, because I see how he's number 3 here. Mm-hmm. There were so many theories about how Mysterio didn't actually die in Far From Home, and it was going to be revealed that he was going to come back and like he faked his own death, which I'm glad they didn't do, but it would have been really cool to see Mysterio and what he had next up his sleeve when he doesn't have drones. Is he just doing magic tricks? Is this a prestige situation? So I think a lot of these people are so charismatic that they would carry their own epics by themselves.
To Mysterio! To Mysterio!
Yeah, and I think like No Way Home bringing them back, like kind of circled them back into public consciousness as well. And I think that's true too with like Joker, like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, that this is a kind of a timeless character. But I think like bringing them back has kind of put them again like on, and bringing them back and then slaying it has brought them back in this way that I think they could be considered equally iconic. If not, maybe not to compare in terms of quality, but in terms of performance and impact. And I think that really says something. I was glad to see that people were having that discussion in the comments. I thought that was super interesting.
Where's the Oscars? Where are the Oscars for Mr. Dickovich? The world
Where are
needs
they?
to know.
The world needs to know.
Sorry doesn't pay the rent. And don't try to sneak past me. I have ears like a cat and eyes like a rodent.
Here's your pumpkin bomb trophy for best Spider-Man villain.
Yeah. In fact, I think before we say goodbye, I think we do have a special guest lined up.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Andrew, would you mind
really?
going to get our special guest? It's a surprise. It's it was last minute. We called his agent. Sometimes these things just work out.
It can't. It's not Willem Dafoe, is it?
Everyone, give a round of applause for Spider-Man.
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 Everybody gets one, you know.
Oh, that's his famous catchphrase. That's what he says.
Everybody gets one. Tell him, Peter.
Apparently everybody gets one.
Bingo.
Hey!
One.
Spidey, we just have one question for you. Does the fan rank sit soundly with you? Is there anything you would change?
Well, you know, it's kind of sick that you're, ranking all these people who tried to kill me. That's kind of very morbid. But I do have to, it looks pretty good with the fans. Definitely surprising to see how things have shifted over the years. Everyone loved Vulture, and now I guess he doesn't hold a candle to big, beefy Kingpin anymore. I guess things have changed in the last couple years, even though Kingpin actually killed me at one time. But I guess
Sorry about that, Spidey.
yeah, happens in the multiverse. But everyone left out my biggest villain, which is capitalism, because it's hard to make a buck in New York City nowadays.
New York City's tough. If only that mugger had a different solution.
All right, we drove him to it. So let's call your congressman, and that'd be the end of my stories. But
Wow, thanks, Spider-Man.
Wow, yeah, this took a turn. Yeah. I think
I'm
we all learned
nonpartisan.
something today. Yeah. Thank you for joining the show. I think we're all leaving with a lot of food for thought. And thank you to our fans, for everyone who participated. This has been so much fun to put together. We love having these conversations and we love engaging with you. So thank you to everybody and have a fantastic weekend. Go see Across the Spider-Verse and let us know what you think.
Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from WatchMojo and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.